Okay, so this is who we are. We're located at the OHSU-PSU School of Public Health, and we grant a certificate of human lactation. This is just a quick little map that shows the pathway that one must walk in order to become a lactation consultant if you choose the pathway to at OHSU-PSU. So it begins at the beginning where either you complete the health science and clinical prerequisites or you are a healthcare professional. Then you come to us for the lactation education, which is 100 hours. Whoops. And some folks choose to do it in a hybrid type format where you drop in now and then, or there's some folks that are completely virtual. You apply for the practicum and folks are selected to be interviewed. If we have enough places for everyone and they all will be a shining representation of our program, we will invite you to take a practicum slot. But first there's some health screenings and background checks and so forth that you will need to do. Then there's the clinical prep class in the summer session, and then we launch into the practicum. We see the little person right here. And when you're done with your 300 hours, you have the summer to study for the exam, which is in September. And the results, it takes them a little while to do, so you receive your results in December. So that being said, it's a long pathway. It may seem like that at times. At other times, it might seem really fast, but we kind of want to get a sense of how you all came here. And so Dixie, would you mind launching the inspiration poll? And you can choose multiple answers.
Okay, you want me to end it?
Sure.
Okay, and let's see what we came up with.
All right, so we have, it looks like the majority are voting for working in the maternal child health field. And then we have a lot of concern for folks who want to make sure every baby has access to human milk. And then what comes next is a positive experience with my own baby. And then secondly, babies. What's not to like about that? But then as you see, there's usually a contingent of folks who are here because they did not get the support that they needed and when they needed it. So we thank you for being here and for that motivation. And then last, but nobody chose the schedule. That's kind of interesting to me. I have some nurse colleagues that I always get the sense like that's why they want to try lactation out. I don't know if anybody's willing to step forward, the person who chose other, if you want to mention what your inspiration might be. All right, well, I'll keep moving then. Let's see here. So who is eligible? So health professionals, as defined by the International Board of Certificate of Lactation Consultants, they are eligible to apply for this pathway, or somebody who's completed the prereqs. If you have one of those two, then you folks can come to Portland State and take lactation education here. And every now and then there might be somebody who's completed a pathway to at another institution, and you've done the education piece, but you're here because you'd want the practicum piece. We highly value folks who've shown that they've already are dedicated to helping folks with lactation, or they're getting a baby experience either through work or volunteers. So we would be looking at that when you apply. At our institution, we have non-degree seeking students, i.e. you've already completed a degree elsewhere and this is an add-on, or we might have Portland State students who would like to have this be part of their degree. And those folks would be potentially studying for a BA or a BS. And then we should let you know, degree seeking students may consider the practicum as part of their internship, but every now and then we have limited opportunities, so we encourage you to have a plan B for your internship. All right, let's see there. Dixie, do you want to take over now?
Sure.
Okay.
So just to be sure that everybody kind of has the timeline in mind. The application is now up on the website, and it is due then by May 19th. By June 2nd, and then what we'll be doing is reviewing the applications, making sure everyone is qualified, those people that are qualified, and we'll evaluate all the applicants, and then we'll be issuing an invitation to applicants for interviews by June 2nd. And then we'll do interviews between June 14th and June 16th. If we need additional slots, then we will probably offer one other day that might be available during that week for folks if we need to do that. June 26th is when we will then be notifying people, because after the application, we'll be again evaluating how folks did, and then looking at their total scores and looking at the number of slots we have available for clinicals. And then we will be notifying folks that are accepted into the program. And after acceptance, then you have between June 26th to July the 31st to complete the background check, the drug screen, to show that you have completed all of the required vaccinations or titers, that you have completed up-to-date CPR. And then once folks have done that by the end of July, it's time to be sure you have planned into your calendar that you're going to be taking that 2-credit distance learning class with Rachel to prepare for moving into a clinical lactation setting. And so that's going to be held between the 28th of August and September 15th, and it will be a distance learning class that folks will participate in. And then the fall term actually starts on September 26th this year. On a Tuesday rather than Monday, September 25th. So just be aware of that. But the fall term then is when folks would start their clinicals. So let me see if I can move the slides, and I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, so let's just review costs. And so if we look at the total picture of costs for our program, we've kind of separated out different parts of the program because, when folks are doing this, they're doing it over a certain period of time. So when folks take one of the lactation education course series, that's a total of 10 credits or 100 hours. And so that's a little bit over $2,900. The clinical experience portion of the program, the Pathway 2 clinical experience, is a total of 1,500 credits. So again, that's closer to $4,600. And then we do have some additional costs that go with the practicum that include the pre-screenings, and you also need to obtain textbooks, during this process as well. And then for the practicum, you will also need uniforms. And so that's an additional $200 to $300. So if we look at total costs, a little bit over $7,800 based upon our current tuition. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think, Michelle, you need to move the slides for some reason. I'm not sure that I can. Thanks. And so just again, being really aware of these requirements for the practicum. These are not negotiable, so we do require that all students make sure that they complete all of these additional requirements. And that's why we give you that period of time in the summer to be sure you're able to get all of those things done. Okay, next slide. So there are a variety of ways to, to be able to obtain financial support for your experience in our program. We have we have a couple of lactation scholarships that are available each year for students. And that application period closed on the 14th, but that happens every year. So no matter whether you're a lactation ed student or a practicum student, you are eligible to apply for those if you're going to be in our program. Then there are a variety of different scholarships through the OHSU-PSU School of Public Health. These are all listed on our website on the scholarship page or the tuition and scholarship page. There's also child care subsidies for those people who qualify. If you are a degree seeking student, you may be eligible for financial aid if you meet the individual requirements for financial aid. And then there are a variety, again, for degree seeking students of tuition discounts of different kinds. And so it's really important to look through those resources and take advantage of them as well. Okay, yeah, next slide, thanks. There are some, in the broader community, there are also different ways that you can get financial support for your lactation training and your exam fees. So locally here, our Oregon-Washington Lactation Association offers exam scholarships. So the exam has a fee that goes along with it. When you reach that point, it's important to look at your local lactation association. They may provide scholarships of this kind if you are not here in the local area. USLCA, so that's the U.S. Lactation Consultant Association, also provides scholarships for both training as well as exams. Then there's an international fund called the Monetary Investment for Lactation Consultant Certification. And that is money. They have a variety of different scholarships that people can qualify for. Their primary scholarship is, again, for an exam fee. And the Emerging Leaders in Lactation Scholarship is one of their other scholarship programs. So there are some other resources. So be sure and reach out if you're feeling like you need help finding financial support. Be sure and reach out and we can certainly help you explore what's available. Okay. Let's see, is this Rachel? Do I hand it off to Rachel from here?
All right, so this is a question we get quite a bit of, like, where will I be doing my clinical experience, my clinical hours? Michelle works very, very hard all year long, creating relationships with different types of clinical sites, including hospitals, pediatric offices, lactation consultants who are in private practice. She works very hard all year, forging these relationships, where then, depending on where a student lives, we will potentially have a site available in as close to your area as we could, she can possibly make it. I think, Michelle, you have a slide later that kind of, do you have the slide where it shows all of our different sites currently? Yeah. Okay, we're getting to that. So you'll be so what we tried to do is, since you'll be actually at a clinical site for the fall, the winter, and the spring term, we do like to vary that experience. So say, I'll just pick, one of you had mentioned that you're from Eugene, but in the Corvallis area here in Oregon. We definitely have sites in Corvallis and Albany, and other, that you might be able to vary your experience, just very that close to where you live. We even you'll be meeting one of our students currently in the practicum, Nadez. She's actually coming to us from Florida. And so Michelle was able to get her into a clinical site right near her home in Florida. So Michelle works really hard at making sure that she can, reach out to those clinical sites that might be near you, and set up that relationship so that you can be placed there to do your clinical work. Oh, so here's our slide. So as you can see, we do, especially here, west of the Mississippi, closer to the coast, we have quite a few relationships with, again, many different types of clinical sites. There's Nadege in Florida. We can see her there. We also, you might see those other ones there, like in Ohio. We had a student, have a student currently who was able to do some of her clinical time in Ohio near her childhood home, and then came back here to Oregon and was placed at a site here to finish up. So, there is a fair amount of flexibility of where we can place students sometimes. Sometimes there are years that maybe we don't have that flexibility, because a lot of it is dependent on how these different sites, the kind of staffing they have, if they have preceptors available, and if their preceptors are able then to take a student for a term. So it is kind of dependent on that as well. All right, so as Dixie was saying earlier, before we even start you off at your clinical site, we do have a 2-credit course in the summer. It's meets over those 3 weeks before the fall term starts. It only meets once a week, but it is a 4-hour class. And this is a course that just kind of prepares everybody for what to kind of expect in the clinical setting. And just generally, sometimes we have students who have never been in a clinical setting before. So we review those things that are necessary to participate in a clinical practicum just in general. But then we talk about how do we then, move forward with our preceptor. One of the things that you will be given is what's called your competency checklist. And so, we talk about, how do we move through this checklist? What's kind of the expectation of when do I move from I'm just observing my preceptor to starting to actually, do some of the hands-on skills, support some of the hands-on skills, and provide some of the education. And then how do I move through the 3 courses so that by the end of my 3 terms, I'm doing consults by myself? How do we get you there? And so we'll talk about all of those things. Once we, start you at your clinical site in the fall, there is, and this is true for all of the terms, we'll be meeting remotely as a cohort, so that we can, debrief about your clinical experiences and continue to provide you with support and, additional, education on particular topics that you might be seeing in your clinical site, to make sure that you're feeling prepared to then move on to your next week's goals, and every week maybe doing a little bit more and a little bit more. We do ask that there's, you prepare yourself to be on your clinical site about 2 to 3 days a week. And so that, depending on your clinical site, sometimes shifts run for 8 hours, sometimes they run for 12. The question I often get is, well, if my preceptor works a 12-hour shift, do I have to work a 12-hour shift? And the answer is no. If you can only, do an 8-hour shift because of other responsibilities, that's fine. But we just want to make sure that you're, meeting at least between the 12 and 20 hours a week so that you will actually get to your 300 hours by the end of the year. There are mostly day shifts. Nadege she'll talk about this a little bit later, but she's actually able to work a night shift at her clinical site. But the days of the week that you'll work and the shifts that you work are really dependent on what your preceptor's schedules are and how that matches your schedule with your other responsibilities. So you'll be connected with your preceptor before you even start, so you guys can hammer out what your schedule will look like. Some sites do offer weekend shifts, but that's dependent on the site and dependent again on preceptor availability, if a weekend's going to fit into your schedule. You will need to provide your own transportation to your clinical site. Sometimes, depending on the sites that we have available near where you live, there might be considerable driving. We've had some students that have had to drive upwards of an hour or more to get to their clinical sites, so know that is a possibility. As I mentioned, we'll be meeting every week to have our cohort distance learning class. And then every quarter, we do have what's called our in-person skills weekend. It is a class and weekend over 2 days where we do meet on campus. For those of you who may not be in the Portland area, you can join us remotely through Zoom, or sometimes we've had students that will pick one of the in-person weekends to actually come into town and be able to spend time in person with their cohort. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, and so maybe I'll have, did Dixie or Michelle want to do this one here?
Sure, I can give you a few tips. Thinking about both your application and the interview, we want to know what are you bringing that's unique, and what contributions can you make both to our program in the Portland State venue, and then to the profession. So you may speak French, you may speak Creole, you may have had experience, or you're located in a rural area where there's not a lot of other lactation consultants. Those are all things to highlight. And then we want you to think about how can you present yourself in a professional manner. We will be doing these interviews on Zoom, but be thoughtful about, okay, what's my background? What you've properly prepared all the folks in your house that you're going to be not disturbed during this important hour interview. And Portland State does have a very vigorous career center that can help prepare you for this event. We've had students in the past who took advantage, and they did sample interviews, and they said it really was helpful to their preparation for presenting themselves. So just to underline, vaccinations, it's a hot topic, but we work under the Oregon Health Authority, and we go by their guidelines, and so they are required for the clinical experience. We need your application to be complete. So we know that it opened up on Friday. So before you press submit the final time, do the once over, twice over, third over to make sure you've got all your pieces. Rachel was very, what's the right word? Generous in her words about my abilities to find practicum slots for all people. Sadly, sometimes we have many qualified applicants, but it may just be a bad year for finding enough slots. So I want to give you the heads up that if for some reason you're put on a wait list, it's probably not to do with your abilities or your what you can bring to the profession. It's just that this year somebody was on maternity leave. They are hiring a new consultant, and so they have to train up their other, there's many factors that go into whether a site is going to be able to host somebody. So again, back to that plan B, if you are a degree seeking student, have another plan for your internship. All right, and then we don't want to forget about how much we've been through these last few years to underline the fact that representation happens. And to us, this is a critical component of our mission to try and provide culturally appropriate care. And so we will be hope to diversify both our career and our department, and we'll be looking for folks who could help us with that.